All right, well, folks, it's 7 p.m. I think we're going to get started because we've got this timed, down to the minute. So I'll keep letting Mary Beth
Good.
coming in and out. I'm not sure what that's about. But I wanted to let you all know that I'm wearing a very special apron that I really don't have many opportunities to wear.
Sweet.
Emily Burrs gave this to me for her bat mitzvah.
Aw.
And, it's just not something I run around the house in when I'm making dinner, but
You should.
I thought you'd all enjoy
You gotta
it.
save it for a special occasion.
So we are going to make the Binstock family Kreplach recipe. If you were at the annual meeting, you learned that the temple gave me a framed copy of my grandparents' ketubah, which is now hanging in our house, and thank you very much. And it was that grandmother, Rachel Binstock, who her daughter, Sylvia Binstock Feingold, my mother, Abby's grandmother, how to make Kreplach. And I guess my mother taught me, but I never was really good at the folding the Kreplach part. And Abby is like the master of that. So it's become a teen thing that we do, and we've been doing it probably since you were in middle school or something, right? And so every year Abby comes up and we do it usually, about a month before the holidays. My mother she did everything fresh that day. And, I'd come home from school and she'd have the kreplach ready and she'd have, the entire meal ready. And honestly, I don't know how she did it. So, because Brad makes most
It's better in the office.
Okay.
But anyway, we make them ahead and freeze them. And they turn out just great. So that's the recipe. I can share it. I think I'll stop sharing my screen now, but I'd be happy to share it with all of you. And by the way, if you have the Bet Shalom cookbook, it is, do you have that at home?
Yeah.
When we used to have the joint school, it is in there, and that's why it has the little brown binding on the picture
Page 63.
in how is fair section. So we get out the Bet Shalom cookbook every year when we make it. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, and if you don't have the Bet Shalom cookbook, I'm sorry for you, but you can ask me for the recipe. So
We need a new one.
you don't have one, Sandy?
No, but we need one. We should make one. A new one.
We could probably
A new edition.
That's a
good idea.
Issue it. Yes. So I'm going to put us on gallery view, and nice turnout, everybody, tonight. So as you might imagine, we made some kreplach ahead of time. That was after Abby cleaned her room and before we had dinner, so that you can see the finished product. So I'm going to take this over there and just show you. They're not quite finished because they have to dry for an hour before you cook them. And we're going to do, how do I do this?
Here, let me assist you.
Thank you. We're going to do the cooking part for you tonight. Not that it's so difficult, but.
See that? So these have been
Beautiful.
they're drying. They need about 10 more minutes to dry, and then we're going to pop them in boiling water to cook. So this is what the finished product will look like, and we're going to walk you through all the steps to get there.
So I know some of you make pasta. I do not. But the dough for kreplach is basically the same as making pasta, I'm told. And it's good to get it really elastic, and I don't always do so well on that. But I'm going to start by showing you the making of the filling. So I have pieces of cooked chicken in here. Now, what we do is, Brad is the chicken soup maker in our house. So he makes the chicken soup, and then we use the chicken from the soup to make the kreplach. So he made the chicken soup over the weekend, and he got a nice big chicken, and we got quite a bit of, more than we needed really, for the kreplach. So this is about 2 cups of chicken, and we took off the skin, we took it off the bones, and we're gonna dump it in the bowl.
And this is
Oh no, we're not. We're going to dump it in
the food processor. But while she's doing that over there, I'll show you. This is what the finished product looked like. It's kind of hard to see, but it's pretty. It kind of holds together. This is just chicken, onion, salt, and pepper. You want it to hold together, not be too liquidy, because if it's oozing out, then your dumplings will fall apart. But you also, you want it somewhat moist, because sometimes this is what I use to try to keep the dough together. So this is what the finished product looks like.
Okay, so the recipe says a certain amount of onion juice or a small amount of fresh chopped onion or fresh onion. This is what I use. It's not even a quarter of an onion. And I'm going to just put that in the bowl of the food processor right with the chicken that you saw. And maybe we can get Abby to show you the...
Oh yes, I will show you the food processor.
Functioning of the food processor. And we just put it all together. And I always pulse until it gets to the consistency that I want, which is just, sort of granular. It's not really a paste. And you saw it after it had other ingredients mixed in, but I'm going to go a little bit longer so you can kind of, I don't know if you'll be able to take the bowl off and show you the consistency of this. Make sure you get all the chicken ground up, and meantime the onion is getting ground up at the same time.
I would say it's important to pulse it and not to hold it down as you would for like a sauce or something you're blending for longer, because you do want it to be somewhat granular, like she said.
So I don't know how well you can see it, but there it is, granular. Okay, so now we're going to dump this into the bowl. What happened to my bowl? Okay,
so there, it might have water in it.
Okay, and we're going to add the other ingredients that go with the filling, which are 1 egg and
1 egg, 1 pinch of nutmeg, 1/2 teaspoon of pepper, and 1 teaspoon of salt.
So just put the egg in.
So while she's doing that, something else I'll say is that
how much salt? A teaspoon?
1 teaspoon of salt and 1/2 teaspoon of pepper.
Teaspoon of salt.
So while you can double the recipe for the filling and or quadruple it depending on how many people you're having and how many kreplach you're making, for the noodle dough, in our house at least, we usually just make that one batch at a time, because the consistency can get a little funky if you try to multiply it too much. So
1/2 teaspoon of pepper?
1/2 teaspoon of pepper.
I can never remember these things, no matter how many times I make
Well, we
it.
just want to look at the beautiful cookbook. I mean, come on. It's great. So yeah, that is just to say, if you do want to make a lot of the filling, you can go ahead and do that all at once, but we would recommend doing one batch of dough at a time if you've got the time and energy. So she just put in 1/2 teaspoon of pepper, and now she's adding a pinch of nutmeg. Pinch. And you can see here.
Okay. There we go. And now we can mix it up.
Just mix it up, and that will then resemble the small container that I was showing you before, which is just the leftovers of what we used earlier to make the first batch, which I'm actually going to toss into the boiling water right now.
Is it boiling? I'm not sure it's quite boiling.
I think so. Mega. Oh yeah, it's boiling.
Okay, so why don't you show them that? You may need me to help with that.
Yeah. Thanks for bearing with us with the screen and trading off of rolls. So you cook them for 15 minutes in the boiling water. So I'm gonna go ahead and drop those in and set the timer for 15 minutes. I think it's okay, Mom.
I'm showing you.
Show me.
Just putting them right, she's just dumping them right there in a pot of boiling water. And I think there are about, I don't know, about 16 of them
Yeah.
that we made earlier. Each recipe makes about 16, but you have to make the dough twice. Okay. So there go those, and in 15 minutes we will put them in a colander to dry them. And I am now mixing up the filling.
Do I put the top on or off?
No, you leave the top off.
Leave the top off as you are boiling the kreplach.
We are really maven. Together we're one maven.
Yeah, that's right. As they say, it takes a village to make one maven.
Well, I am mixing that egg really nice into the chicken and the salt and pepper and nutmeg. And it's made that nice sort of almost doughy-like consistency that you saw earlier. So there it is. Okay, step 1 is completed.
So we'll just set that aside. And while she's getting the dough ingredients ready, I'm gonna clean off our workstation. You'll see there's pepper and spices and other stuff from the making of the filling. That's totally fine, but you wanna make sure that your work surface is totally clean as you're rolling out the dough and prepping out the individual kreplach on there.
So I think I just dried that, so it's okay.
All right.
So the recipe says to roll out the dough on a floured board. My mom had one of these nice things that she like flipped out of the counter and it came up and there was a cutting board on it. I don't have that, but we just do it right here on the countertop and it seems to work out just fine. So I'm going to make the dough now.
And while she's doing that, I am going to be turning on my camera. I'm logged in on my phone, so that when it gets to the point of rolling out the dough and making the individual kreplach, you'll have a view from above to see. So if you want to be seeing that view, just check what says Abigail or iPhone. I don't actually know what it says. Let's see. It's right here. Yeah, it says Abigail Backer. So I'm going to go ahead and set that up.
Okay, so now I have 1 egg and I'm going to add to it 1/4 teaspoon of salt, which I just happen to have right here. Okay, and then you're supposed to mix it together, but you don't really want to completely scramble the egg. You just want to lightly, what's the term? Let's see what it says on the recipe.
Lightly whisk.
Yes. Beat eggs slightly with salt. And then you...
Abby, if you unmute your phone, then we can make you speaker view.
You want Abby to...
I don't want to unmute it because of the feedback.
So you can't do speaker view?
No, that's okay.
We could switch. You could be muted and I could be unmuted.
Oh yeah, good point.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cause like anything.
Is this good?
Sorry, it won't work. Okay, so I've got the egg slightly beaten with salt or beat, I guess is the word. And now I'm going to put 2/3 of a cup of flour right into it.
I would say that if you want to see what's happening on my screen, which is nothing exciting right now, but in a few minutes you can pin me instead of the speaker view, which you can do by clicking on the 3 dots on the upper right hand corner, and you can pin my screen, so that's your main view. Good idea though.
So it says to add the flour and then mix it together. I just use a spoon until it becomes a stiff dough. And really, before it becomes a stiff dough, you have to start kneading it with your hands. So it's just the egg, the flour, and the salt. That's all that's in here. And I'm trying to mix it up as well as I can. But it's not a big deal. You don't have to get every single crumb of the flour in there, because actually if you do, it's going to be too stiff. You want it to be sort of elastic. And honestly, my first effort tonight was a little too stiff.
It always takes a few.
Yeah. So So I'm gonna now work it together with my hands until it feels nice and stiff, but still has an elasticity to it. Who makes pasta there? You guys make pasta? Your son?
I see some hands.
So you know what I'm talking about it's dough, but it's still elastic. All right, so it's turning into a ball now. I need to work it a little bit more so it's nice and smooth and not too floury. There's still some flour left in the bottom of the bowl. That's okay. It's actually good. And I keep just putting a little bit more from the bowl in there and then turning it into a nice bowl. And then, Andy, would you like to, are they okay?
Yep.
Would you like to put the flour on the board? So this is where put the rolling out on a floured board is very important.
So I'm just gonna go ahead and take this, sprinkle a decent amount of flour on the counter, which we cleaned off already
From our last effort.
And now she is taking the dough and placing it right on the counter.
And it's good to have the rolling pin a little bit floured too. It's still got a little bit of schmutz on it from our earlier effort, but that's okay. And then we start rolling it. And I think it needs a little more dough on here, flour, so it doesn't stick to the dough. And you try to get it nice and thin. I flip it over, because the flour really helps kind of move it around so it's not sticking to the counter. And it's getting kind of sticky, so I'm gonna put more flour on here. Maybe I should have cleaned the rolling pin better, and I didn't.
A lot of trial and error goes into it for sure. And Mom was saying too, even the size of your egg or the weather that day can affect your dough. So just important to be patient, and if you have more eggs and you're not feeling the dough, just scratch it and try again. It's no big deal. Nothing that a maven wouldn't do.
So yeah, it's a little stuck to the counter, but I'm gonna lift it up so you can kind of see that it's kind of elastic. And I'm gonna just put a little more dough underneath it. And you don't want these tears in it, so I'm gonna kind of repair it here so that we can make squares out of it for folding into triangle shape for the Kreplach. So this is the third batch actually that we've done today to make those 16 that are in the pot right now. We did 2 batches of dough. We'll probably do 2 batches of dough to finish up this filling too. Alright, so I'm going to start now. You're supposed to have 2-inch squares. I don't use a ruler or anything, I just kind of eyeball it. I'm making the 2-inch squares. Sometimes they're a little bit more like a rectangle, but they should be squares. And I get my one sort of as a template, and then I just use it to make the others. And by the way, this is how I make hamantaschen too. Only there are circles. But I get the template and then I use it to make others. So we've got 3 now. I might get 6 or 8 out of a recipe. Just using a butter knife to cut them apart. That's 4. Maybe I can get 1 more here, and then I will, oops, kind of stuck. That wasn't great, but Abby's very good at repairing them.
About how thick is the dough?
It's thin. I don't know how to describe it. What would you say?
Not see-through, but just before, if that makes sense. So it's not as thin as a pastry dough that you would lift up and be able to see through it, but like just just a touch
I don't know if
less
you
than
can use that one or not. It's kind of
Probably, I don't know, a quarter of a centimeter. It's pretty thin.
Okay, so I've got 5 here. I don't know if the 5th one is going to be usable, but I'm going to put together all the stuff that was just kind of, around the edges and make more.
Can you see my station?
Can you see her station?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Great. All right, so now I'm gonna show you how I make the individual kreplach. So some of the dough is cracked, and that's okay. There's always extra bits and pieces floating around that I sometimes use, and I'll probably show you to make little patches for them. So I'm going to take about a teaspoon size, maybe like a heaping teaspoon, and sometimes I adjust it depending on the size of the square that I'm dealing with. This is a pretty big square, so I'm just going to give it a little extra. I would say better to have too much than not enough, because sometimes the filling is helpful in holding it together. So I roll that ball up and I place it right in the middle of that square. So now I'm going to take 2 opposite sides, this side and this side, fold it up on top and pinch the top. So you'll see here the sides are still open, sort of looks like a triangular cannoli at this point. So the top is together, and then I just slowly pinch all the way down. Sometimes there's gaps showing, make sure that it's secure. And again, this is sometimes where I use the filling to hold the dough together. But this dough is actually holding together quite nicely. I just pinch, pinch, pinch all the way down, and you've got a nice looking kreplach right there.
And that's why she's the maven.
Ha! You should have seen me try to make the dough. Ha ha! All right.
So she's going to keep making kreplach, and I'm making more 2-inch squares.
So again, pinch opposite sides to the top. Pick one side, fold down. And sometimes, if you're doing this for a while, you might need to wash your hands in between. If you've got too much dough or filling on your hands, you don't want your hands to be too sticky.
Can we see a close-up of that?
That good?
Can you see?
Sort of. Sort of.
Ooh, too close? Here, how about this?
Yeah, got it.
Is that better?
Oh. Okay.
And here's another one.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know it's not the best,
It's okay.
but
Got it.
please shout out if you want me to slow down or if you want me
No.
to zoom in. That's what we're here for. Please feel free to give us any questions.
In the meantime, I just made 4 more squares. One of them, it would be polite to call it a square. It's not really a square, but maybe Abby can fix it. And so we have, how many, 9?
Mm-hmm. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, and that's alarm is about to
Okay.
go off before
All right.
you make the
So-
next batch.
All right. So I'm going to see if I can get this where you can see. Do you see my colander?
We can.
Okay, so I'm going to take these out. I don't pour them in there. I take them out one by one and put them in the colander. I'm just now kind of, a couple of them stuck to the bottom, I'm just kind of stirring them. They have another minute to go, but I'm going to take them one by one and put them in the colander, because if you just dump them in there, they could break. And you want them to be those nice triangle shapes. And when they break, of course, the filling comes popping out. You don't want that to happen. I mean, it's not the worst thing in the world to have a broken kreplach in the soup, but it's nice to give everybody their 2, and they're nice and whole. So 32 seconds till they're done. Any questions in the 32 seconds?
Do you ever cook them in the soup? Can you actually boil them right
My
in the
mother
soup?
always did because she also made the soup that day and it was just ready to go right in. But we're always making them a month ahead and freezing them. So
Right.
Unthaw them.
and when we we don't even thaw them. When the soup is cooking for the eve of Rosh Hashanah, and we also have them on Yom Kippur, we just put them right in frozen in the soup. All right, so I turned off the cooking Kreplach, and they grew. You'll see that they grew. They're a little bit bigger than they were.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my.
And I'm going to put them in the colander. Okay, maybe I don't do it one at a time. Maybe I do two at a time.
Yeah, I think the important takeaway is not to pour the whole pot
Like you would
into,
pasta.
right, and that you want to scoop them out a few at a time so that because they're very delicate.
Oh, wow.
Dropped one onto the computer.
Dina, do you have these in place of matzo balls or with matzo balls?
No matzo balls. We only have matzo balls on Passover.
Okay.
Dina, you said you use these on Yom Kippur too.
Yeah, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and also Purim, because they're triangular. But the truth is, I never have time to make them on Purim because I'm too busy working on my costume and my gag. Classic. It's enough to make Hamantashen, okay?
We used to do the same thing when I was a kid. Kreplach was on Rosh Hashanah and matzo balls were on Passover.
Yeah, I was kind of shocked when I met Brad's family and learned that they had matzo balls on the high holidays.
How could you?
It was kind of shocking.
Because they're delicious.
Okay, so
So this is a good example of one that is kind of falling apart a little bit on the side. So I'm going to take a little bit of the leftover dough and make kind of like a patch.
Okay.
I don't think we need to make another round right now, do you? I mean, here they are. You see them? Cooling in the colander. I mean, there have been times when we made 80 Kreplach because we were having 20 people to 2 holidays and everybody would just give somebody one Kreplach.
It's a shamba.
One Kreplach. By the way, the singular is Kreppel. Kreplach is plural, like Knedlach is plural.
Right.
Kinderlach is
Rudelach.
children.
Yeah.
So the singular is Kreppel.
Does that mean Rugel is just one?
Yeah. So you can't give someone just one Kreppel unless they request it. So you have to have 80, having 20 people over. So we haven't done that in quite a while. That is, have 20 people over.
So this is also a learning experience for Hebrew, how to say the words
Yiddish.
correctly. Yiddish.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
Yiddish?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
that's Yiddish. I don't even know what they're called in Hebrew.
Okay, so here's another
Someone can
example.
Google it and let us know.
See how it's breaking in the middle? So I'm gonna take, again, a little bit of the extra dough. This is not in the fine print of the Beth Hillel Temple cookbook. However, you don't want a Kreplach explosion. So I'm just taking this, thinning it out to sort of match, and then putting a little Band-Aid on the boo-boo. It's not very attractive, but it will stay together.
And that's all that really matters.
And you just pinch it. You don't put any water or anything to seal it. You just pinch it together, right?
Correct.
No water.
Just pinch. And if it's not really sticking, again, this is sort of almost like the charoset. Like I think of this as like the mortar of the Kreplach. So if it's not sticking, worst comes to worst, just spread a little bit of that chicken stuff around it. And it's almost like a glue. I will say this is probably the least attractive looking one that I've made today. But guess what? They all taste the same.
Yeah, and I'm just cleaning out my dough bowl because normally I would make, maybe I should make, as long as we're doing it. I don't know how many people we're having, if any, for the holidays. Everything's so in flux, but I mean, if we don't use them on the holidays, we can use them another time.
So while she's debating that, what I'm gonna do is get an empty cookie sheet, that same cookie sheet that we saw the kreplach on earlier that we cooked, and I'm gonna just line these bad boys up right on here. And it's very important that you let them dry
For an hour.
for an hour.
So who said they made pasta? Right. Okay. So Sandy, you do the same thing. You let the pasta dry, right?
You can, but you can also cook it right away. I mean, right?
Okay. Okay. Well, these, I don't know. I don't know what would happen if you cooked them right away.
It might help to dry them. It may firm them up a bit since they're so thin.
Yeah, I think it's helpful to stay together.
Would you say that?
Dina, I make, this is like similar to capelletti. The only thing is I just shape them differently. Almost the same thing when I make that. Same filling, same pasta dough. A capelletti and an Italian noodle. But
What's a capelletti again, Dorothy?
just like a kreplach, but it's Italian.
And what's it stuffed with?
A chicken. You can simple with anything. I normally do chicken, just like you did with the chicken.
Okay. Okay. Great.
It's interesting because I just read, I was trying to find the Hebrew word for kreplach, which I failed at. I didn't find that. But I did find stuffed pasta may have migrated from Venice to the Ashkenazi Jews in Germany during the 14th century.
Wow.
So you're making an ancient dish there.
Well, you know, it's a universal thing. You know, pierogi, wonton. What else is the same thing?
Banana.
Yeah.
Ravioli.
Yeah. It's all the same thing. So, so anyway, I don't think we'll, you know, bother to make in front of you the last set. We'll make another round of this so that we have, how many do we have over there now?
9.
9, and we had 16, so
25.
Yeah, so we'll want to get another 6 to 8, so that we have enough for the 2 holidays with a small attendance. But I wanted to tell you what happens to these then. So what we do is we put them in a Ziploc bag, you know, like
After they cool
yeah.
for a little.
And what I do is I write on the bag how many are in each one. So, you know, if I'm having 10 people for Rosh Hashanah, but 15 for Yom Kippur dinner, then I know, you know, which bag to take out to get the number that I need for that night.
And I would also add too that once they're in the strainer, it's not like pasta where you want to rinse it with water or anything like that. Just leave them in the strainer and let them cool off and then put them in the bag. You'd
Very handleable.
Yeah, you really don't want to, you know, put water on them, hot or cold. Just let them drip dry in there and then go ahead and put them in the bags once they've cooled down.
Do you put them in the bag in a one layer? Or do
Yeah,
you just
one
dump them
layer.
in?
I can
One
fit
layer.
like 10 or 15 in a bag.
Okay.
Do a Tupperware too, probably.
I freeze mine.
I have a question.
I'm listening, Karen.
Could you take a screenshot of the recipe and just email it?
Yeah, sure.
Because that would be very.
I already have taken a screenshot of it. So, I mean, I took it with my camera. So
Yeah.
if people would just email me and let me know you want it, because otherwise I have to remember who all was here.
Okay, thank you.
To you.
But it's the same as in the cookbook, right?
Yeah, if you have the Bet Shalom cookbook, you're all set.
Well,
I haven't been here long enough to have that cookbook.
I bet you have extras around.
Sounds like a second edition might be in the works.
But now
maybe we could call it an addendum or something.
the original one, if you have it, you know, on Antiques Roadshow, the question is, did the price go up or down?
Well, right now, it's really valuable to those of us that don't have it.
I was
I
gonna
think I have 3.
I was going to say one other thing about the kreplach. I've forgotten, but are there other questions?
Like, about how much filling do you put in each one?
About a teaspoon.
Yeah.
About a teaspoon or a teaspoon and a half, depending on how big the square is and how crumbly the dough is. If the dough is more crumbly and less firm, I would say closer to a teaspoon. If the dough is really firm and stretchy, I would go ahead and put in a little more.
Dina, Abby, I use a small melon,
Melon baller?
and that's enough. I also put mine separately on a cookie sheet, and then once they're frozen, I put them in the bag.
Oh, smart.
You freeze them on the cookie sheet?
Yep, and then as soon as they're frozen, I put them in the bag. That way they don't stick together and they don't break apart.
That's what, because that reminds me of what I was going to say. My niece offered to make the Kreplach one year, and she made the mistake of putting them in the freezer uncooked.
Oh.
That did not work out right.
Yeah.
You have to cook them first.
Do you put some kind of a liner or oil the cookie sheet before putting them on in there so they don't stick? Because they won't stick.
Mm-hmm. Well, and even if they do stick, you're basically plopping them out right into your soup, so they'll unstick in the water when they start boiling.
Okay.
Have you ever made it with a meat filling instead of the chicken filling?
No, because we always have the chicken from the soup.
Okay.
I just made my soup too. So I haven't. I always keep.
I was just looking at a recipe in another book that I have. This one calls for a meat filling, and the dough recipe makes a little bit more than what you just said. The ingredients are the same. The proportions are just a little larger.
Mm-hmm. That'd be good if you're making a lot. But when I first started making it, I thought I could just double the dough recipe, and it just never worked out right. So I stopped doing that. You can double the filling recipe, but not the dough recipe. And I still have chicken left for chicken salad.
This recipe in this book calls for brisket.
Ooh.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of them with brisket, use the leftover brisket, or the one my grandmother made was just ground beef that she would use. That's from the first edition of the Amicad cookbook from like the 40s or 50s.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, what a
And actually it's the same dough recipe. I looked it up and it's the same dough recipe.
Oh, it is.
That's
Interesting.
amazing.
So proportions, because I was curious about the proportions.
Yeah. That's really cool, Ben.
Anything else?
So
I've got
brisket, you wouldn't throw it into chicken soup, would you? How would you have the soup?
People do.
Oh, okay.
I notice, like there's when they have soup at Max and Benny's, it's got everything in it.
Yeah.
That's the mishmash soup.
Yeah, and Sunshine Levy, she's made chicken soup at the temple, and she always has beef in it. So that's just not something we ever did, growing up. But
Let's depend on where your family was from. Originally. What if
I've heard of some people even after you make them and boil them and all that, then baking it like with the brisket and the gravy and stuff, having it baked instead of in the soup.
yeah, I mean, the same thing with you could probably fry them in a fry pan.
Right.
You
Yeah,
like
you
fried
do that too.
wonton.
No, like pot stickers.
Right, like pot stickers.
Pot stickers, yeah.
The other thing it suggests in this is, it says to put them in chicken soup with this, but then there's another recipe where you serve them with marinara sauce.
With chicken filling? Interesting.
Game over.
Really?
Karen, was that one with the chicken filling or the meat filling? Karen.
And these are so like pierogies. I mean,
Yeah.
Chaz has made pierogies all the time,
Yeah.
but mostly potato filled
Mhm.
versus meat filled. I mean, you can get meat, but
Delicious.
same option, same thing.
I have a press to use to make Chinese dumplings, and I was thinking if you put the dough on that and put the filling in, and then you just press it, and
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
I suppose you could. I mean,
it makes
that
like
matter,
a-
you could go to the refrigerator case and get fried wonton
Yeah.
dough and use that. I think when I first started to make them, I did that.
That
You
was
said
before I came
2 inch
along.
squares, right?
Yeah.
They were 2 inch.
The ones we make are 2-inch squares, but the wonton wrappers are bigger.
For the 2-inch, I learned this from Mom, to use the top digit of your thumb as like roughly
1 inch.
1 inch. So if you're trying to eyeball it, go 1, 2, and then check it that way. Or you can use a ruler if you're feeling super precise.
Gary and I decided that we can't use our thumbs because they're too different from each other.
Oh,
Actually, English standard measure is the width of the thumb of King Richard II.
Where is he when you need him?
that's great.
I'm just gonna put the ones we made in a Ziploc here. And,
Want me to hold that open?
sure, and if there are other questions, otherwise, I think we did our Maven thing.
Hey.
Other questions?
Dina, I think you've exhibited excellent skills and knowledge in case you become a grandma someday.
Just in case.
Just in case.
There's another generation coming who has to learn how to make kreplach.
Just in case.
Right.
That's right.
Yeah.
The aunt and the grandma, the
Exactly. Yeah.
gonna be Savta, are gonna have to show her
Oh, I'm ready.
because her dad didn't learn. Somebody needs to be admitted.
It's a must.
Her dad has the wrong size thumbs. We're very
When can we get our samples?
good question.
What?
Sample.
Yeah, Ben wants a tasting. He's ready.
Hopefully next year.
They'll perfect Zoom in the future so that can happen.
Oh, one of them has a hole.
Right.
There is a hole in one of them, but we're not throwing it out. We're just.
But nothing falls out, but
They
the
didn't.
filling
Wow.
doesn't fall out. even
It
if
hasn't
there's a
yet.
hole
It might in the soup.
It might. What? It might. It hasn't yet, but it might when you.
There they
pull
are
them
in the
later.
Ziploc.
Oh, look
Yay.
at that. Are they still warm?
Yeah,
Have they
they,
cooled
they
off?
were easy to touch. You know, they aren't hot. So if there's nothing else, I think that's it for the Kreplach version of Mavens in Our Midst.
I love
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I do love my rabbi.
No, we
I
could
love
make
the
those. We
we
could
do.
sell those as a fundraiser.
There you go.
Absolutely. Everybody wants one.
It's so great to see everybody. Hugs the man.
Bye.
And
Thank
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.